Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Monday morning coffee chat. Today on Adventures with Sarah, I am joined in a new format that we're trying out today. Rather than coffee chat with one person, we're going to be doing guide roundtable today. So today I am joined by Andrew Villone, live from Slovenia. Hello, Andrew.
Hello.
I'm joined by Trish Feaster, the travel file, one of my dearest friends and travel blogger colleagues who lives in San Diego. Hello, Trish.
Hey, everyone.
Reid Coen of Imprint Tours, who is my co-conspirator on many adventures.
Morning.
And Rainer Metzger here from Seattle also, but you're not in Seattle. You're actually in fake Germany, aren't you?
That's right. I'm in Leavenworth, Washington.
Excellent. All right, welcome everybody. So I'm going to put us into view so everybody can see us. So this idea today that we have is that we are going to work on the concept of a guides roundtable. So all of us are tour guides. Most of us have been working in the travel industry for more than 10 years. And we thought it would be fun to do kind of a McLaughlin group style discussing the current events in travel situation. So I'm going to go ahead and pass off hosting duties today to Andrew and Reid, and they're going to get us started with the conversation. So Andrew, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Issue number one. We have what I like to call the EU snafu, or is there any unity in the EU? I wanted this very topical. Right now, as many of you know, there's a list of 14 approved countries that could travel to the EU. And unfortunately, almost every EU country is kind of going off and doing their own thing for nationalism and for politics and economic reasons, things like that. And I'm to the point where after 2 months of putting this together, I'm losing faith that if this is the best they can do, can we trust any kind of, let's say, unified vision for tourism in Europe anytime this year or anytime soon?
No.
Correct.
My feeling, just based on the things that I'm tracking, is that that every country wants to do something in a different way. And even if they seem to have imposed the travel bans the same way, the reports I'm getting from people coming and going from Europe is that every country has a different process for accepting people. So I'm going to say no. Trish?
I'm going to agree with you there. I mean, there's not much to disagree on. I respect every country's right to be able to do what they see fit regarding their own population and their own communities. But in terms of cohesiveness, no, I don't know how they're going to find a way to make that come together and have agreements with one another about that.
What say you, Reid?
I'm afraid I don't have a great opinion on this. I'm an American. I don't know really what's going on there. All I can say is, having watched the EU for 20 some years, even when it was kind of moving smoothly forward back in the early 2000s and everybody was on board and the prevailing consensus was ever closer union, I still characterize the whole thing as lurch and muddle. It was like they'd have an idea, they'd lurch forward, and then all of the reasons that it wouldn't work came to fore, and they'd sort of, it was more like one step forward and two steps back very, very often. So I don't have a ton of faith in the European Union. And with the rise of identity politics and populism, and, which leads to nationalism, it's looking less and less hopeful all the time. I know my answer was a little more generic rather than to your specific issues and concerns, but that's kind of the input that I have is I'm steadily losing faith in what's going on with the European Union.
I'm going to step in here and, of course, agree that for this year there's not much hope for travel to the European Union, but I'm optimistic because I think that the virus has sort of appeared following economic pathways, and certainly there are very strong economic ties within the European Union, and the virus doesn't respect borders. So what's happened initially here is there have been very strong reactions in the areas where there are outbreaks, right? And then less strong reactions where early on people didn't, see and feel the virus present around them. And so now that's changing. We're kind of going into a second phase with this. And I think as time goes on, month by month here, people will see that it's really going to take a sort of broad, unified, cooperative strategy in order to defeat this thing. And you can't just have, small localized responses while everybody else sort of stands by and pretends, or hopes that the things will get back to normal. So, as sort of strategies nationalize in the United States and then kind of become European-wide in Europe, I think that that will create a stronger response, a more effective response, a more efficient response, and will hopefully allow for travel, if not in the near future, then sort of in the intermediate future. I'm hopeful for 2021.
I'll give you my final thoughts on this, just as an example, what's going on here, why it would make it so difficult, even if Americans were able to travel, that the way things that are done here, it's, last night the parliament convened and they've decided to add France, Czech Republic, and Croatia on the yellow list. So if you're coming from those countries now, like starting as of tomorrow morning, or sometimes it's maybe 2 days in advance, then you have to do this self-quarantine. And then there's this whole other list, like if you've been in these yellow countries and you're coming back to Slovenia and you have a residence or a citizen here, then like these are the processes, but they're done so quickly. It's not like, hey, here's this thing, like we're going to implement this starting on this day. It changes so quickly, and it's almost impossible for anyone just in Europe to make their plans to come. And this is just one country as an example, to make any plans that it's like, okay, well, how will you expect like tourism to get back if you're going to actually open up to more places? And if each country does this type of thing, then if you're going to go from one country to the next, it's like, God help you, because it really seemed like an impossible thing. Not because of health concerns so much. It's just because what's going to happen tomorrow with country X and country Z. That's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm, let's say, disappointed in, that there hasn't been like a clearer message and a clearer idea of what they're going to do.
Well, I'm curious for you, Andrew, because your question posed, what would it be like through the end of this year? What are you personally anticipating, and what are your prospects for positivity and optimism for 2021?
Well, I think one thing that would be great is if at least countries started making decisions that, even if they're not all completely collective, like within the EU or within Schengen, just making some decisions actually based more on health, because there's been a lot of countries where they say, hey, this weekend coming up, it's our big, whatever, religious 3-day holiday. We're closing the borders with this other country only because they want to keep all their tourist dollars there, which of course, then all of a sudden the people that were going to those other countries either have to cancel, or those people coming back in, they find the border closed. So I've even heard things where Italy says, we've rejected all 14 of these non-EU countries, but Sicily has accepted them. How is that even possible? So it's just like, I want more countries to get either on the same page, and also just make things that seem, let's say, maybe are dictated more by health concerns than these other kind of nationalism and economics concerns. Because I think everything's fraying a bit in the EU. Like Reid said, there's less cohesion. So now would be the time to actually have some real unity and say, hey, we spent a couple months thinking about this. Let's try to stay with whatever we as the EU have planned. And right now it doesn't seem like they're doing that.
All right, Andrew, kick us off to the next issue.
Let's go a little lighter. Let's just discuss, hey, regardless of what's going on, who's taking a vacation this summer? Trish?
I'm going on my third mini moon today, actually. So my husband and I got married a few weeks ago, and we had all these, of course, we had grand plans for the wedding itself, for a big old vacation. We were going to go to Hawaii for our first honeymoon. We were going to take a huge trip to the Cook Islands for our real honeymoon. And those all went by the wayside. So we kind of changed our plans. We've been to Santa Barbara. It was our first mini moon. We did 3 nights there. It was fantastic, actually, because you can be outdoors, you could walk around. Santa Barbara, the city itself, the municipal government took really strong steps and moved pretty quickly. We're on top of it to make sure that the restaurants built new outdoor terrace seating. And so along the main drag, State Street, where you have a ton of all different kinds of restaurants, Italian, Chinese, Indian, all sorts of stuff where people would really congregate, those had been shut down, just like everywhere else. But what the municipality said, you need to build outdoor terrace seating so people can get out and really enjoy that experience. So we were able to partake in all of that. We had the beach access. We went biking. We found some of the best Mexican food we'd ever had. That was a real nice opportunity, a quick getaway from San Diego to be able to do that. And then we had another mini moon. We just went to one of our local Indian reservation casinos and had a little night over there and did a little gambling, had a little fun. That was fun to check out. And then we're going to another one today, going there for 2 nights. So that's our little getaways. There's a little bit more ease of restrictions at the Indian gaming casinos, just because of the nature of what they can do in terms of what they can do on their own lands. They are still making sure that they're following safety protocols as per San Diego County and California State in terms of their medical recommendations and health recommendations, but there is a little bit of leeway there.
Well, I'm going on vacation next week, and I'm going on, well, this week, actually, I'm leaving tomorrow, and I'm going to Las Vegas with my parents, which is maybe not the best decision I've ever made. But the reason we're doing it is, well, my parents got a free room down there, and I got free plane tickets down there because the airlines right now, if you have miles, it's incredibly cheap. For me and my kids to fly down to Vegas, into Vegas and out of Phoenix was $11 a person and 40,000 miles total. So it cost me 40,000 miles and $30 to fly all of us down and back from Phoenix. So it's so incredibly cheap. And I guess my attitude towards this right now is that I've been in my house since March. I haven't gone anywhere other than my parents' house since March. And I think that we just need to learn how to live with this. I think that we need to learn how to get back to some semblance of normal. We need to be able to do some of the things. And if we just stay in our houses for the next 2 years, I think not only will that make us all crazy, but we'll never actually learn how to deal with things. So we're going to take all the precautions. We're going to wear gloves and masks. We're going to bring sanitizer. We're going to be very careful. And actually, Delta is fantastic because Delta has people spaced out. Like between the 3 of us, we have an entire row of seats in the airplane. So it's going to be, we're going to document it as we go because I'm interested to see what's going on. We're going to have our own car. And if things look a little too dicey in Vegas, we're going to stay at the Venetian. And if that looks too dicey, we're going to hit the road and go stay with some friends in Phoenix who are kind of on quasi lockdown, but they make me laugh. So I'm happy to be on lockdown with different people. So that's our plan for vacation, is just going and having a lockdown with different people. But that's my feeling about it, is that right now we really need to think more about not just isolating ourselves, but how do we get back to some semblance of normal and live with this situation.
Anyone else?
Well, I'm on vacation right now. I'm up in the mountains, just enjoying a few days away from the city. And in August, I'm planning a road trip down to California in the Bay Area. Right now, I'm planning on driving down there first, meeting a friend, and then sort of going from there. But depending on how things go in the next couple of weeks, I may consider flying down there. But either way, you know, I'm going to have fun with it. And then, you know, as soon as the borders reopen, if they ever reopen for the European Union to allow Americans to travel there, I hope to be one of the first people to fly transatlantic to get back to Italy, just to spend a little personal time there. hanging out with friends.
Reiner, if you drive down to California and you want to drive a little farther, we've got space here. So
All right. Yeah, I've never been to San Diego. I'd love to. And that's kind of what you have to do. You know, you sort of drive between, you know, staying with friends, you know, sort of creating these kind of bubbles, these pods. You know, as far as I know, it's within the guidelines here, at least in Washington State. We've been advised by the governor to limit our social contacts to, well, let's say you're less than 6 feet social contact to no more than 5 people outside of your household per week. So, you know, the idea of driving somewhere and spending time with friends, I think, you know, as Sarah said, we need to do that. We need to do those sort of normal things to have social contact. We need to do that, but we have to sort of be smart about it and figure out, you know, how best to spend, you know, our kind of recommended time with other people.
My hope, of course, is also that I'm going to head to Europe. I'm hoping towards the end of the summer, and that's going to really depend on a lot of things. But I'm a European Union citizen, so that's something I want to look into, is what is the restriction on a citizen of Europe flying back from the United States. So that's something else that I'm interested in experimenting with. So we'll see. Reid, you're not going on vacation?
Well, I said I have no life, which those of you who know me know that's true. Quite frankly, I haven't had a vacation in the classical sense in probably 15 years, because vacation and work travel have always morphed together for me. And I do have a bit of a research trip coming up with the whole COVID situation and international travel being probably the biggest question mark going forward. I've tried to pivot a little bit. Rick Garman and I put together an American Western tour that we did last summer, a small little sort of beta group. It was pretty successful. He's added a second tour of the American Southwest. So we've got the American West, which is primarily Wyoming, the American Southwest, and then my brother Neil and I, Neil, who sometimes works with me and is a 30-year veteran of the National Park Service, we're putting together a Colorado trip for next year. So sometime before the summer's out, I'm probably going to jump in a car and spend a couple of days driving all over southern, central, and southwestern Colorado to scout out some tour activities for a future tour. That's the closest I ever come to a vacation, is to go somewhere and work. But it's fun, so it's restful and does the requisite restfulness job for me.
All right, Reid, you got some questions for us?
Wait. I want to know where Andrew's going.
Oh,
Okay, yes. And I will tell you, I'm going to Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia, on Friday for a 2-day, me-only getaway. This will be like.
What about your turtle?
How my turtle will be taken care of by the kids and my wife. I think he'll probably survive a 2-day weekend, even if no one showed up to help him out. So this will be my first trip, let's say, to another city outside of the city that I live in since, I don't know, 4 months or something like that. And someone just opened a new one of those, let's say, what do you call them, capsule hotels, where you can get the little whatever, something like I'd see in Japan, or I imagine to see in Japan. And I'm always wanted to try one of those. So it just opened up. So it's like brand new and all clean. And they showed on their little website the video of them, how they disinfect and this, that, and the next thing. So I'm going to give that a whirl, because it was 25 euros a night. So why not? And hang out with some friends, and hopefully next week or in the near future have some great content on the Open Kitchen, which is the kind of like smorgasbord along the riverside in Ljubljana every Friday, which just started up again, and I have not been this year. So it's kind of like get away, see friends, and let's say consume lots of food. So kind of standard little vacation for me.
all right, Reid, we're kicking it over to you now.
Okay, well, actually, first I want to segue from this discussion that we're having already to pose a question for the panel. What is our expectation about what the new normal is going to be for travel? And more specifically, what I mean is, throughout the 25 years I've been in this business, big disruptions happen like 9/11 or the Gulf War, and there's an immediate and precipitous drop in travel and tourism. But then people get used to the new normal, they get a little more comfortable, and even though statistically none of the threats or disruptions have changed in any significant way, people still get used to the new normal and they start to travel. I'm wondering what you think that might look like, let's say a year from now. And just to get the ball rolling, I'm expecting by a year from now, people will be comfortable traveling with a mask, and maybe the social distancing thing will not be as stringent as it is right now. I can imagine starting out with 20 tour members on a bus and everybody sitting in their own seat. But within 4 or 5 days, everybody's gotten used to each other and they know each other. And all of a sudden, people will be comfortable and starting to interact. You follow my line of thinking here? I'm just wondering, what do you guys think this might look like a year from now in terms of people's adjustment to this new normal?
Well, I'd say
Go, Sarah.
Go ahead. Go, Sarah.
I would say that and actually Andrew is probably going to agree with me on this because we have been talking a lot about this. I think that the future of travel in terms of at least group travel that we're speaking about is that it's going to be small group travel. I think it's going to be bubble travel. I guess that's the way I'm looking at it, where it's going to be small groups of people that probably know each other already, and doing, home basing. So you kind of reduce risk, because I think the easiest way to adapt to this situation, especially because even if there's a vaccine in the next 6 months, that doesn't necessarily fix the problem in the short term. So I think that staying in one place for a long time is a really smart idea. So staying for a week, for example, in one place. And this is why I'm kind of developing this concept for next year of staycations, where we would stay in a villa or the same hotel, because then you're reducing risk. If you're not changing your hospitality situation all the time, you're going to reduce risk. Keeping the groups really small, and really trying to keep people outside of big, busy areas. So going to the countryside versus going to cities. I think that's going to be what'll happen next year, because we're just going to be having to constantly think about, how do we keep ourselves safe? If you're going to be in a big crowded city, I love Rome, but it's a big crowded city, and I'm not sure that's going to be my best destination to offer for next year. I think the countryside or parts of southern Italy where there's wide open spaces, that's going to be a way it'll make people more comfortable if they feel like they can be apart from people. So that's what I see as it's going to be small group travel, smaller off the beaten path destinations, and very few changes in hotels.
Andrew, did you have something to share?
Yeah. Well, I'd agree with Sarah that I think too it would be smaller groups. But also, Reid, what you said, for better or for worse, people are creatures of habit, and it's very easy for us to get back into habit. So when lockdown ended in Slovenia 2 months ago, for a while I was like, okay, I'll wear my mask here, and I'll watch these markers at the grocery store. And now when I go to the grocery store, I look over my shoulder and it's like, okay, can you back up a little bit? Because everyone just goes back to what they've been doing, especially when you visually don't see, or you don't have this, let's say, panic going on. So I kind of think, if people are together for a little bit, after a while, they probably will I'm going to sit next to this person on a bus or whatever, because that's just how you do. If you don't think people are sick, you I don't know if you're going to travel and just be paranoid mindset the whole time. I think people will go back to their old habits. My biggest question is always just really about flights, how easy it was before whatever the new normal will be, to get anywhere in the world to anywhere else in the world with a gazillion options. And I really don't know what that's going to look like. And in some ways, I think that could have a big effect on where people can go, or how long it takes to get someplace. And if they want to put in that 2 changes of planes and this and that, all wearing a mask, maybe some people will opt out for that.
Trish or Reiner, any thoughts?
I think one of my concerns because I agree with Sarah and I agree with Andrew in terms of the small group travel. One of my concerns would be because of the social distancing, which I think will still be in play, obviously a year from now, and having to have PPE and wearing your masks and all of that stuff, there is a kind of emotional distancing that I think happens. And we as travelers, we need to make sure that we're finding ways to get around that, right? Because you can literally feel distance. You feel like nobody's looking at you. If you're looking at them, you can do it kind of passively and voyeuristically, but how do you engage? And I think that's one of the things that we need to strive for is whether you're traveling on your own with your family, whether you're going with a small group or whatever it is, how can you find a way to dive deeper into that culture? How do you make the emotional connection? How do you make the one-to-one, person-to-person connection? How do you make that more real for you? Because otherwise, sit at home, look on your computer, and just click through pictures. That's what you'd be doing otherwise. And for me, that's something that I'm going to keep challenging myself to think about is when I start taking my groups back to Vietnam, to Thailand, to Europe, to wherever, how are we going to be more linked to that humanity that we're trying to connect to? I don't want to be just an observer. I want to be in it. I want to be a part of it. I want to understand what people are going through on the other side of the world, because that's what travel brings us to do.
Yeah, I think that I'll agree with what's been said so far in terms of traveling in a smaller footprint, smaller groups, being a little bit more light and nimble. And I think just to focus the question a little bit, Reid, I think that the new normal probably looks like there being a vaccine. So even in a new normal where people are traveling with a vaccine, I think there still will be lasting effects. I think people have seen how quickly and suddenly a virus can just sort of totally, shut the world down, just sort of seemingly spontaneously pop up, right? And I think that people have seen how the virus travels along certain pathways, how it tends to affect people traveling into dense areas. And so that right there, for me, totally kind of turns the bucket list upside down. And I really think that, while some people are always going to want to travel to that bucket list place, maybe travel becomes less about, hitting as many bucket lists as you can in one trip, and more about visiting places that you're sort of allowing to surprise you, places that you have less preconceptions about. And so I like to think that, guides will be even more indispensable than they were before, back in normal times, because having information, having really excellent suggestions, being able to trust somebody to say, let me take you to a place that you've never seen before and that will totally, knock your socks off, will totally wow you. I think that is going to become more appealing than, trying to go to Paris and to try to see all the big sites as quickly and efficiently as you can.
Excellent. In the interest of full disclosure for all of you who are tuning in and listening to this, smaller groups mean higher prices, just so you know. Okay, hey, let's turn to something a little more upbeat, a little more cheerful, maybe. It still is somewhat COVID related, but I'd like for this inaugural program to not be all about COVID-19. And that's how to introduce this subject. The idea that really smart, savvy travelers are the sort of people who are willing to get out there and go to places that that might be a little bit suspect. Let me give some context here. I took a group to Egypt in 2016, which was just a few years after the Arab Spring. And at that point, Egypt hadn't really come back fully for commercial tourism. People were still a little bit nervous about the social unrest there, about the political unrest there. And my point is that the rewards for those people who were a little more intrepid, who went with me in 2016, we had a spectacular experience because there were no crowds. We stood in front of the Great Pyramid with just a few other people. We went to Abu Simbel, and at dawn, we were the only people there. And I'm not exaggerating even a little bit. There was not one other person in front of Abu Simbel except for the 25 people with me. And my point is, when the COVID-19 disaster starts to ebb, when it starts to feel the earliest stages of travel, the people who get out and travel at that moment are going to have that kind of spectacular reward of less crowds and being there's another element of this as well. People are treated like kings when you're sort of the first ones to arrive after there's been a big lull. I mean, the permutations go on and on and on and on. So I just want to open this up to the four of you. Share your experiences that you've had like this. What I'd really love is for this to be an encouragement to all of you out there listening to be ready to travel and to get out there and take advantage of that when it happens. Who wants to be first? Andrew, go.
Hey, this is perfect because just the other week I saw there's a new some Czech company has a high-speed rail line that they're doing these private trains from Prague through Hungary to Slovenia and on to Croatia. So Czechs can go to Croatia on the coastline without having to fly. And I thought, you know, I haven't been to Prague in 10 years. Prague's probably the most beautiful city I've ever seen. But when I was there for the third or fourth time 10 years ago, I thought, it's beautiful, but I've seen it all. And I really don't want to go here unless I know for sure it's just the total dead time of the year, because that's not the experience I want to have. And I really thought, maybe this summer the place I'll go to is Prague. It's not even on my list. I've been there many times, but I've never really seen it probably like it is now. And that's a big sell, especially for those of us who travel more and been to many places. There's certainly cities I would like to see when everyone's not just hawking whatever in front of you all the time, and you always have to dodge the selfie sticks like that. Those are the kind of, almost think like I want to go to some out of the way places because I'm, off the beaten path, but I also want to go to more of these places, like you said, that will be different places because of the fact that there's going to be a lack of travelers. So I think it's a real interesting point. And I think for next year, certainly a lot of the places that I would take people in Croatia will seem like quite different places. And those people who come are going to have a much different experience when there's not 4 cruise ships in Dubrovnik like there are normal years.
I would comment that I think that you guys know that I've been beating the drum for about 10 years now, but especially in the last 3 or 4 years, that travel had reached an unsustainable situation. Places that I was going, like Venice, Florence, and Rome, I mean, it was miserable. In September, I actually thought to myself, I never want to do another tour that includes Venice, Florence, and Rome, because they were just such miserably packed places full of people who didn't even really care that they were there. And it was a situation that made me really want to turn my attentions to trying to sort of draw people out of the big cities and draw them into other parts. I mean, if we're speaking about Italy, there's so much to see in Italy that's way off the beaten path. And so that's a no-brainer, that's an easy thing for people to do to have a good travel experience. But in terms of what you're talking about, Reid, I think you and I, because we were around for 11th stuff, both of us have seen exactly what happens when there's a major catastrophe like that, because I led a tour starting on I did a tour September 15th, 2001, I think it was. And I had 2 tours in a row that year. And that was one of the most incredible travel experiences that I've ever had. Very powerful, partially because it was a moment when the world was galvanized behind Americans, but also because we owned everything. I mean, there were no lines, there was nobody in any sight at all. And people, above all, I think this is what's going to be consistent with our current experience, is the people who are coming back first are so appreciated. There's so much gratitude for bringing business back to them, because a lot of them are, I mean, especially right now, people are really suffering in the tourism industry, restaurants, local guides, all of these kinds of people. And when you come back and you're one of the first people bringing business back to them, that gratitude is really priceless. And I think that the feeling I got from that gratitude was I felt I was able to connect more with people because they were so appreciative about that I was there. I had more of their attention and more of their emotional hard drive space somehow. And I felt like that was a moment, a couple of months when I was traveling, when I made some lifelong connections with people. So I really think that we always have to look at disasters as opportunities. You know, that's the thing I always think, is that opportunity is the sister of despair, because there is something about the people who will be traveling first. They're really going to get a very unique experience. And you were just talking about Abu Simbel, Reid, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to go back in time and experience my escape from Egypt with my tour group, my imprint tour group. But we had Abu Simbel. We were the only group in Abu Simbel in March, the only tour bus in a lot that probably had enough space for 300 coaches. We were the only ones. And that was magic, to have places to yourself. So those who are, you know, kind of adventurous enough to try and get out there and be the avant-garde of this, I think they're going to be highly rewarded.
Trish or Reiner, any input on this subject?
Well, just in regards to both of your Egypt trips, I went 2 years after the Arab Spring, and it was the exact same kind of experience. Tourism was down. They had been annihilated by something like 80%. And you can imagine all of the offshoots of the tourism industry and how devastated the economy was. And so to be among the few who were there, I mean, the Germans were there and the Russians were there. They didn't stop traveling. But in terms of Americans and other Western Europeans, there was nobody. We showed up at the pyramids of Giza at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we were literally the only car that was there. We had the place to ourselves completely for at least an hour and a half before any next person showed up. And again, the hospitality that we experienced, because people were so grateful and they were hungry for the connection, right? When we think of travel, we often think about what are we as travelers going to experience? We're going to go to this place, we learn about the cuisine, we learn about the history, we learn about the culture, but it's an exchange. It's what we also as travelers bring to these communities and countries that we're visiting. And this is going to be a time when people want that connection again, not just for a monetary sense, but to connect with other human beings in a new way.
Yeah, I totally agree that in times of great difficulty, that also sort of creates an opportunity to connect with people when you're traveling. And that's really important. It's, you know, it's just a matter of measuring risk versus reward. For me, you know, I've spent half my life in Italy for the last 20 some odd years now. And for me, it's really important to spend time there and to connect with, you know, my people there. So it's worth a little bit of risk, so long it's within rules and guidelines and regulations and everything for me to go there, even, you know, before there may be a vaccine. So yeah, it's worth it to me. Now, I do remember, you know, 2002 in the aftermath of 9/11, and just, yeah, appreciating sort of less crowds and more time, I guess, for connecting with you know, people in the travel industry anyway, as you know, people you would naturally meet along the way. And so, yeah, strangely, there is that kind of opportunity.
Well, and we're getting some questions on Facebook that I just wanted to throw out there. People are wondering, what would the plan be if somebody in your group has tested positive during the trip and has exposed others? And my response to that personally is that, I mean, at this point, we have postponed all tours, you know, until next spring, because I think at this point, just based on what I'm reading, it sounds like they should have a vaccine ready probably by the end of the year. So my personal point of view would be that I will be comfortable offering group tours again when people can be vaccinated before they come. So that's my feeling. And when I speak about going to Europe in the next 3 or 4 months, I'm speaking about for myself, because I'm only going to take that risk for myself. I wouldn't, as a professional, it would not be responsible, I think, to take people at the moment where that could be a problem. Because then, if one person gets sick, then you end up ruining the vacations of everybody. So that's my point of view. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's a question that popped up on Facebook here.
I think you're expressing the reality, whether we have a different opinion of that or not. I mean, for international travel, getting on a plane and going to a completely new culture where things are mysterious and unknown to us, I think until there's a vaccine available, that's probably not a realistic goal. So yeah, I think you're reflecting the reality.
All right, I think we're going to start wrapping up here. And Andrew, I think you have one last topic of the day. Shall I call you Andrew McLaughlin?
All right, last issue of the day. What wine am I drinking here? Sarah Murdoch.
Slovenian red.
Wrong, but it is red and Slovenian. Trish, I need a more concrete answer than that.
Georgian red blend.
Don't I wish, but wrong. Reid, any guesses? Any guesses on the varietal of the grape here?
On the varietal, okay, I will go with Pinot Noir.
You are correct. It is a Pinot Noir 2017 from Slovenia. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers and Slovenia.
All I've got's a water bottle here. If I can just, I wanted to make a couple of extra points on our previous discussion about this jumping in and traveling when a place first starts to open up. That requires that you not listen to the media, right? It's the media and the way that things are presented about what's happening in, name your destination, Egypt, post 9/11, anywhere, right? What the media is reporting is very, very often not a reflection of what's actually happening on the ground. There are lots of other sources. Maybe this could be a topic for another day. Lots of resources for finding out what's really happening somewhere, as opposed to what's being reported on CNN or BBC. And the last point I want to make is that this is a real opportunity coming up for us as in the post-COVID-19 world, because I've noticed over the last 20 years that there's a huge appetite for people saying that they want to travel to places that are untouristy. We as travel professionals, we've all heard that over and over again. I don't want to go to the touristy places. I want to go off the beaten track. And typically that's not true. People don't really want to go to those places that are untouristy because there's no plumbing there. And the fact is, what people are really saying is, I want to go to the really amazing and cool places in the world, but not share it with a gazillion other people. That's the opportunity that's coming up for everybody who's willing to push the envelope, who's willing to not listen to the media, find out what's really going on in the country, and make an informed decision about whether it's safe to go there or not. That's just my editorial for the day.
All right. So before we sign off, I was thinking, why don't we let people have a little teaser about what we're all working on? What do you guys think?
Okay.
Thumbs up, thumbs down. All right. So since we have your attention, we actually have quite a lot of people watching live right now. What we wanted to let you know is that this little discussion panel is sort of a shot across the bow, you could say, for a project that we are all working on. So all of us who are now underemployed tour guides, we have banded together and we are creating a collective travel magazine project that we're working on, which is going to have a bunch of different interesting arms to it. And one of those things is going to be, we hope, a weekly or bi-weekly roundtable discussion with a variety of different tour guides discussing travel issues every week, I hope. So I hope that this format has worked for you guys out there watching in Facebook land. And if you could just leave in the comments what you thought about this format, and if you have any ideas of what kind of content you would like to see from our amazing group of colleagues. We have, what, about 20 people, 20 different guides on board helping us out with this project. So that's going to come up. August 1st is going to be our launch date. So put August 1st on your calendar, and you're going to start hearing a lot more from not just me, but our group of fantastic superstar guides. So thank you guys all for joining me today for all of your wonderful questions. Any final comments? I think that's how the McLaughlin group ends, right? Final thoughts?
Usually I think it's McLaughlin who's like, he gives his final thoughts and boom, he just always says bye-bye or something like that. So.
That's right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We need somebody to be really grumpy.
Why don't we all just do a final thought, and then both Reid and Andrew, and also Reiner, if you want, you guys could do the grumpy bye-bye together if you want. So final thoughts. My final thought is that,
Don't they usually go around and everyone makes a little prediction?
yes, that's what it is. Thank you. That was what it is. Okay. Andrew, take it away.
Prediction, next week's or the next time we do our little roundtable style, we will have slightly less COVID topics to talk that we'll be talking about. Slightly less. I'm taking the under on that.
All right, Trish, what is your prediction?
I predict that once everybody sees what we've got coming up on August 1st, people are going to get really excited about travel again and find new ways to explore our wonderful world.
All right, Reiner?
I predict that if I get to do this again in joining the roundtable here, that I also will have a glass of wine.
Reiner stole my thunder. I was going to predict that we would all take a page from Andrew's book and that we will all have a glass of wine in our hands.
Before and after the show definitely helps.
Mind you, it's only 11 a.m. where I am, but you know, it's 5 o'clock somewhere in the empire. So,
Well, my prediction is we should be doing a prediction just for the next week, but my prediction is for the next year. My prediction is a year from now, tourism and travel is going to be back better than ever. And we're going to be better than experience. We're going to travel smarter. We're going to travel more thoughtfully. We're going to travel in a more holistic way. And we're going to travel in a way that keeps all of us employed and in a gainful way, but in a more spiritually uplifting way. So that's my prediction. All right, that's it for the Villone, Murdoch, Feaster, Cook, Coen, Metzger group. And now you get goodbyes.
Hold off the tongue. Bye-bye.
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 Bye, everybody. We'll see you again later on Adventures with Sarah later this week. We're going to do lots of cooking, but also we're going to be live from Las Vegas. So join me all week for who knows what's going to happen. So we'll see you soon. Ciao. Thanks, everyone.